Welcome to the Nameless. I turned it off. It turned itself back on. That was the moment I stopped telling myself it was a glitch. I remembered the small click of the webcam's light going dark, the relief that followed, and then the quiet panic when the light flickered back on by itself. I was sitting there, hands still on the keyboard, staring at that tiny white dot like it was an eye opening. I didn't move for a long time. I just watched it, waiting for it to blink again. Before all of that, my life had been boring in a way I was grateful for. I lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment above a closed-down print shop. The place smelled faintly like dust and old paper no matter how much I cleaned. I worked remote tech support for a mid-sized company, which meant long hours on my laptop, headset on, talking people through problems that usually came down to restarting their router. I had bought a new laptop a few months earlier. It had a built-in webcam, which I rarely used except for occasional team meetings. I usually kept a small piece of tape over it. Not because I was paranoid, but because everyone did. It was a joke online. Cover your camera. Stay safe. The night it started, I had peeled the tape off for a meeting and forgot to put it back. After work, I stayed up late watching videos, the laptop balanced on my knees. The room was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and traffic a few blocks away. Around midnight, I noticed the webcam light was on. I assumed I had accidentally opened something that used the camera. I closed all my tabs. The light stayed on. I opened the settings and checked which app was using it. Nothing showed up. I laughed at myself and shut the laptop. When I opened it again the next morning, the light was off. I told myself I'd imagined it. Over the next week, little things happened. The light would come on for a second and turn off again. My cursor would move slightly when I wasn't touching the mouse. I'd chalk it up to lag or updates running in the background. I ran virus scans. Everything came back clean. I started putting the tape back on the camera. That worked for a while. At 3 a.m., I woke up to a faint clicking sound. It took me a few seconds to realize it was coming from the living room. I lay there listening, trying to decide if it was worth getting up. Eventually, I did. My laptop was open on the coffee table. The screen was black, but the webcam light was on. The tape was still over it, slightly peeled at one corner, like someone had pressed against it from the inside. I closed the laptop and went back to bed. I didn't sleep much after that. The next day, I changed all my passwords. I enabled two-factor authentication on everything. I felt silly and exposed at the same time, like someone had walked in on me without me noticing. A few nights later, during another late work session, the webcam light came on again. I froze. Slowly, I reached up and turned it off through the settings. The light went out. A few seconds passed. Then it turned itself back on. That was when I unplugged the laptop and shut it down completely. The light stayed on for a moment longer than it should have, then finally went dark. I sat there in the silence, listening to my own breathing. I remember thinking how thin the walls felt, how close everything suddenly seemed. I didn't use the laptop for 2 days. I took it to a repair shop and explained what had been happening. The guy behind a counter listened politely, nodded, and ran some diagnostics. He said everything looked normal. No malware, no remote access software. I asked him if it was possible someone could access the camera without it showing up. He shrugged and said anything was possible, but unlikely. I brought the laptop home and put it in a drawer. I started using my old one instead, even though it was slow and loud. It didn't have a webcam. For a while, things went back to normal. I slept better. The apartment felt like mine again. Then I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was blank. The email itself had no text, just an attachment. I didn't open it. I stared at the file name instead. It was a date and time, the night I'd woken up to the clicking sound. I deleted the email and emptied the trash. My hands were shaking. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I restored the email from the trash. I saved the attachment to a flash drive and took it to a library computer the next day. It was a video. The video showed my living room, grainy and slightly warped, like it had been recorded through glass. The angle was wrong for a security camera. It was low, tilted upward. It was from my laptop. The timestamp matched the file name. In the video, I could see myself standing in the doorway to the bedroom, staring at the laptop on the table. I watched myself hesitate, then reach out and close it. The video ended there. I watched it 3 times, trying to see something else, some reflection, some movement. There was nothing, just me. I remember thinking how quiet it was in the video. No fridge hum, no distant traffic, just the soft sound of my footsteps. I unplugged the flash drive and left the library without checking anything out. That night, I couldn't bring myself to turn the lights off. I sat on the couch until morning, listening. Every small sound felt amplified. I kept thinking about the angle of the camera, how it seemed lower than it should have been, like it had been adjusted. A few days later, another email came. Same blank subject. This time there was text. "You left the tape crooked." I stared at the words until my eyes hurt. I didn't reply. I blocked the address. I reported it. None of that made me feel better. I started noticing changes in the apartment. Small things. Objects moved slightly from where I remembered leaving them. The tape dispenser on the desk turned the wrong way. A chair pushed in when I was sure I'd left it out. I started taking photos of the room before going to bed. I told myself it was to prove nothing was happening. Every morning, I compared them to what I saw. Most mornings, everything matched. Sometimes, it didn't. One photo showed the laptop drawer slightly open. Another showed the tape missing from the desk. I stopped using the apartment's Wi-Fi. I tethered my phone instead. It didn't help. One night, I woke up to the sound of my name. It was faint, almost like it came from inside my head. I lay there, heart pounding, waiting to hear it again. It didn't repeat. The next email arrived the following afternoon. "I can still see you." That was it. No attachment, no explanation. I unplugged everything. I took the laptop out of the drawer and wrapped it in a towel, then put it in the trunk of my car. I drove to a big electronics recycling center on the edge of town and dropped it off without giving my name. For a few days after that, nothing happened. The silence felt heavy, but it was a relief. I started to believe it was over. Then I noticed the small black dot on my TV. I hadn't paid attention to it before. It was easy to miss, tucked into the bezel at the top. I checked the model online. It didn't have a camera. At least, it wasn't supposed to. That night, the dot glowed softly. I unplugged the TV. The light stayed on for a few seconds longer than it should have. I sat on the floor and laughed quietly because I didn't know what else to do. I thought about calling the police, but I didn't know what I'd say. Someone was watching me through devices that weren't supposed to watch. I had no proof I could hand over that wouldn't make me sound unstable. Another thought crept in, one I didn't like. The videos only showed what I'd already seen myself do. No threats, no demands, just observation. I moved out a month later. I left most of my electronics behind. New apartment, new devices, new routines. For a while, I checked every light obsessively. I covered every camera. I slept with my phone face down. It's been over a year now. Nothing else has happened. No emails, no videos. Sometimes, late at night, I think about how quiet that video was, how the room sounded wrong, empty in a way it never did in real life. Last week, during a video call at work, My new laptop's webcam light flickered, just for a second. Probably nothing. I still turned it off. I still watch it, waiting to see if it turns itself back on.